Welcome. Really excited for you to be here. I'm excited because culture and leadership always is something that intrigues me. My name is Jeremy Grandstaff, and I work. I actually am the membership chair of ISODC, and I'm also the owner of S&G Endeavors. And we're really excited to be working with Jerry Glover and Suzanne Sterling. And I'm going to give you two an opportunity to introduce yourselves in just a moment. We don't know what the clicking is, but we're going to work on trying to resolve that issue. So if you've got a bad connection, that could be coming from you. We did hear that go away just now. Again, really excited to be here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Jerry, to kind of kick us off and really take us into this topic a little bit further. Before I do that, there are a couple quick ground rules that I want to cover. The first is that we do want to keep those lines muted as long as possible so that we can hear others that are talking and be able to especially hear Jerry's presentation. There is an opportunity for small group breakout, be able to break out into our small groups. And of course, we always have the ability to report back from the small groups as well. We covered keeping the lines muted. I think, well, you can also use the chat as a tool to be able to have some of that conversation, and we'll work our best to bring in the chat pieces. As John mentioned, we are going live on Facebook and YouTube, and so people will be able to join us, and we'll pull those in as well. And without further ado, let me turn it over to you, Jerry and Suzanne, and just really help us know why are we here and where are we heading in this conversation. And I'll kind of turn it over to you, Jerry. I hope that's an okay introduction.
Thank you, Jeremy and John and Ryan. What I'm going to talk about today is something that those of you who know me, you've probably heard me talk about before. But I think what we're doing is taking a little bit of different approach in that recently I was having a conversation with a colleague, and when we talked about the need to understand how culture, change, and development and leadership integrate and are part of the process of change no matter where you go, we came to the conclusion very quickly that basically what we're talking about is a different way of looking at the world and looking at change, a new paradigm, if you will. And so that's what it's going to be about today, is the way that we can move toward a better understanding of how we educate and train professionals in the field of change and development, and also culture and leadership, because I see them with this, particularly with this new approach, as being very much interrelated. And what we're talking about in terms of professionals, we're talking about how MBAs are trained, how education programs put out people, med schools, nursing programs, hospitality schools and hospitality training programs, the military, government, NGOs, and international relations. Those are just some of the professional areas that I believe need to look at the idea of creating a new way of integrating those three concepts. Unfortunately, much of our traditional professional education uses linear models and processes. Of course, my colleague and friend Bob Marshak has come up with an article back in the 90s called Confucius Meets Levin, and in which he challenged that whole approach of using one best way. Trompeter has argued that culture is often seen as a side dish, something that's not really part of the main course, if you will, of how we look at organizations and behavior and so forth. And I also will argue that bias toward Western values and perspectives on change and development, such as short-term planning, individual motivation, achievement focus, looking internally that we can control the environment, and sequential thinking and universal model thinking are all part and parcel of what we need to look at. The one best way approach, of course, is one of the problems that we encounter all the time in looking at change initiatives. Very often, the change initiative is my way or the highway, and we don't really look at the effective manipulation of power. It's just something that comes from wherever the source of the change initiative might be. We see fads as sometimes if we look back historically in the last several decades, we can see a number of innovations and change programs that simply got layered on top of an existing culture and then eventually went away. Oh yeah, we used to do that. Or oh yeah, we tried that once. Or oh yeah, we tried that here, but we don't seem to do it anymore. So what I argue is that the failure to recognize, respect, and reconcile key cultural dilemmas is related and essential to understanding a change initiative. I also argue that cultural relativity, holistic perspectives, and looking at things historically and a broad-based appropriate and a broad base is very appropriate to the study of human behavior. Okay, well, before we get started, I want to show you a little something that I think is very one of my favorite movies is from Fierce Creatures, and it shows a takeover of a zoo, and John Cleese is playing the role of a manager who's been sent by the conglomerate to take over the zoo and manage it and whip it into shape so that it meets the takeover company's expectations. He meets with the zoo employees, and they, of course, fear the takeover and don't trust the new manager. So let's take a look at that just to get us on the right track here. Now, you might turn your volume up if you have trouble hearing.
Over there, right? Yes. And small mammal house there. That's good. Mammals.
Have you any background on this?
Well, I've eaten a lot, you know. Sorry, Jeff. Evening. Evening. Now, for those of you who have not met me yet, my name is Rollo Lee, and as of yesterday morning, I have assumed command of this zoo. And I shall be reporting to our new owners, Octopus Inc. of Atlanta. Now, Octopus, of course, is owned by Mr. Rod McCain, who, as I'm sure you're aware, is a remarkable man. Starting with his father's radio stations in New Zealand, he has built up a global empire currently worth more than $6 billion and growing.
How much does he want in the end?
Yeah. What?
How much bigger does he want to get?
Well, there aren't any limits. He wants growth.
Presumably, he's aware of Dr. E.F. Schumacher's concept of limited resources, or as John Paul Sartre puts it.
Any sensible question? Yes.
Are you going to close the zoo?
Well, I'm very glad you asked me that.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am.
No, you're not.
Now, look. This zoo has to make money.
It does.
Yes, but not enough.
Enough for what?
Now, don't. Actually, I will tell you precisely. Mr. McCain requires a 20% return on capital from each and every asset in his empire.
Why 20%?
Because he does, that's why.
Could we explore that thinking of the year?
No?
I thought not. Despite the fact that current management theory regards...
Now, the big problem is this. How do we cut costs and attract more visitors? Well, I'll tell you from my experience at Octopus Television exactly what draws the biggest audiences all over the world. Violence. Oh, yes. Mr. Sylvester Stallone did not get where he is today by playing in Jane Austen. Therefore, in this zoo, we require only animals that are potentially violent, fierce animals. All the rest, I'm afraid, have to go.
What do you mean, go?
Well, we'll have to find other homes for them.
What? Outside the zoo? This zoo is dedicated to conservation.
I am all in favor of conservation, and the three things that I want to conserve are this zoo, your jobs, and fierce.
Okay, that brief video clip of two minutes or so is one of my favorite examples of a change situation where there's an acquisition of the zoo by a larger conglomerate, and basically the cultural values there are the universalism of the home office and the company that acquired them versus the particular needs of the people who are at the zoo. They're saying we need to be treated differently and so forth. And John Cleese, of course, representing the company, is saying, no, 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 everyone get treated the same, 20% across the board. We'll come back to that a little bit later, but I wanted to show that to you up front to get a little levity in the process. Now, I'm not going to read you all these different types of change initiatives, but I just sat down the other day and was thinking, how many change initiatives have I seen come down the path in the last couple of decades? And if you look there, you'll see quite a few. And they all involved situations where the change model itself had particular cultural values and built into it, and certain expectations about the way the world would be if the change initiative was implemented in that particular cultural context. Specifically, out of that list, some that are quite common is mergers and acquisitions. Very rarely do organizations do cultural due diligence to match the two cultures of the merger or the acquiring company and the one being acquired. Often in motivation recognition systems, individual or group motivation is commonly an issue. Back in the quality management implementation that went on so much in the US in particular in the 80s and 90s, and is carried on now in different names such as Six Sigma and so forth. It was always a quality versus quantity issue. And many times organizations that have been built up on the basis of quantity had difficulty dealing with the concept of effectiveness or efficiency. Effectiveness rather, or quality. A common issue that people get excited about are gift giving. In some countries, the way you do business is through gifts. Other countries, it's through building the contracts and not necessarily building relationships. Of course, the time dimension is always an issue. Do we go in sequential time, or do we go around from A to C to get to B? Time and meetings are also important. Local customs or the headquarters. How do we operate our schedules and agendas and so forth? And of course, change in development. I mentioned earlier Bob Moshark's work in that he explains that not everyone in the world sees change and change processes in the same way. So it's not just the change initiative that's important, it's the process for creating change that's important. And that has to be a cultural fit as well. And so what we need, and I'm arguing as I have earlier, we need a new paradigm to integrate these three concepts because they're all very critical to professional development and to the professional fields that we talked about. You think a little bit about change and development. Realize that that stakeholders all have their own values, and so when you go into a change context or change situation, there you may have unions, you may have management, you may have regional differences, you may have differences between professional categories. Accounting people may be different from HR people, and HR people may not see things the same way as operations people. So basically, the values held by the various stakeholders are very important to be able to understand how to implement the change effectively. The change model itself has to be looked at. And is it one that comes in and brought up from the outside, or is it one that develops internally in the organization as a result of discussion and people's input? There are 4 different fundamentals, I think, necessary for understanding this process. And that first one is cultural competence. The second one is being able to know how to acquire knowledge and how to separate the noise from the information you need to know. Being able to create synergy, that's all about reconciling dilemmas and creating a synergetic culture out of a very diverse culture. Holistic perspectives are important, as sometimes we look only in one location and don't really get a true picture of what maybe international company might be and so forth. Power dynamics is something that I try to bring up. It's something that's under discussed in the field of change and development in particular. And it's important to understand that power has everything to do with change. And I'm going to say this so you guys can react now, but if you don't know how to effectively manipulate the power dynamics, then you probably aren't going to be successful as a change leader. And that doesn't mean you abuse people. That means you simply understand how power is given and how you use the power to help implement the change process. We also use the concept of social culture encounters, SCEs, which I'll bring up in just a minute. And we've talked already about the need to avoid the one best way advocacy-based models and so forth. I want to show you one early study from Change. This was called the VICOS project. If you're interested in reading more on it, I don't have the time to go through it with you. But this is a project done in the 1950s by a group of anthropologists from Cornell University who took grant money down to Peru and bought 500 peasants and a hacienda there from a wealthy landowner. Their idea was they wanted to devolve the power that came from the landowner toward these serfs and peasants in the village, and find a way to make them more empowered to do what they wanted them to be able to do, and that is improve their economy, their healthcare, their education, their self-governance, all those things. And over a 10-year period, this particular project became successful. Okay, and I highly recommend this site to you if you're interested to look at a classic case of change back in the 50s, which was a long time ago, and considerably much earlier than some of the more current discussions of empowerment and change and community development. It's a classic case because it's still around today. This is a current site from Cornell, and you can go and look and see 70 years later approximately what they were able to maintain and how the project has been a success. It's one of my favorites to look at because it's been around, and it also is a successful story. Let me get this. I can't get in there to get that. Hold on. Come on. Excuse me for a second here. I'm having a little issue here with the cursor. There we go. If you want to look at that VICOS project, you just go under Cornell and VICOS project, and you can get to that link very easily. There's all sorts of videos and historical accounts and so forth. That particular case, since we're talking about someone who's older and wise, I want to introduce my friend and colleague, Dr. Tusi Avalio. He's from Hawaii, well, Samoa originally, but he's worked all over the Pacific Islands, and he and I have spent a lot of time working on projects. And one of the concepts that he has a lot to offer to tell us about is traditional wisdom. And traditional wisdom, of course, is the knowledge that comes from cultures that are non-Western cultures and cultures that may not fit the values and perspectives of the cultures of those professional areas we talked about, MBAs and medical schools and so forth. So with that, Tusi, I'll turn it over to you for a few minutes, and just if you wouldn't mind, share a little bit of your knowledge. You there, Tusi?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I thought you were upset because I called you old.
Oh, no. That's actually a compliment in my culture.
I know. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. One of the, I think one of the aspects that
Tusi, you can't hear you. Tusi, can you hear me? Tusi, we can't hear you. We lose you? Okay, I'm going to come back to Tusi. I want to go ahead and we'll come back if he can get his mic checked. Suzanne, can you check with Tusi on that? See what the problem is?
I'm on it.
Okay. Anyway, methods for effective applications of culture development and change in leadership. These are some of the things we've been using for a couple of decades. And The first concept I want to mention to you is the idea of social culture encounters, SCEs. You might think about, well, how do you get a handle on this loose, evasive thing called culture? Well, it's fairly easy because you can measure culture, you can get a handle on it, and you can analyze it. And you just have to have something that allows you to do that. And what we use are called social culture encounters. Essentially, they're anytime two or more people come together into an interaction, and we'll show you some more on that in a minute. We also use cultural dimensions, which we take mainly, in my case, from Tropinars, individual, collective, universal, particular, and so forth, as ways to have a framework to understand culture once you start to look at it and to do comparisons. Cultural dilemmas comes to us from Charles Hampton Turner and Tropinars and others. I've worked with the concept for about 20 years, and the idea, of course, is that anytime you have a social culture encounter with two or more people, you more than likely may have some diversity there. And when you do have diversity, the likelihood of having people share values, particularly toward a change project or to a change outcome, may become greater. Then we use something called creative reconciled change solutions. In other words, what we're really talking about is being able to take those dilemmas and come up with new solutions of how to do things that were there previously. We don't call it thinking outside the box, we call it creating new boxes. Because basically, if the box is having problems, just getting outside of it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. So we're talking about creative solutions to cultural differences, ways to find ways to make synergy out of diversity. And of course, finding a way then to implement it in an appropriate way is very important. Some of you heard me tell the story of when we worked in Tonga, and Tusi and I and some others were on a project there, and we went and did a lot of things that we thought were very appropriate based on Western models. And when we left, we assumed that we'd have to go back and help them more. But when we left, the king actually, Tonga, implemented all of our recommendations by law without any participation or discussion or anything. And actually, they reduced their harvest mistakes and errors from 35% down to 5% in one harvest. And it worked very well. It's a different type of change process, but it worked for them very well because they were used to that type of autocratic solution.
Hey, Jerry, this is Jeremy, and I do apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. Tusi, I think we may have you back, and I know you were just talking about him, so I didn't know if this might be a time when you wanted to bring him in.
Are you on, Tusi?
We have him. There we go. Tusi, how you doing, man?
I'm sorry about that. Something died on me.
That's
Okay.
all right. Well, you've got them there with you, Jerry, so I'll step out of your way.
Okay. And Jeremy, I remind you that 15 seconds came out of your time.
All right, you got it.
Okay. Go ahead, Tusi.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think traditional wisdom brings in dimensions that had not been seriously considered at all in the more linear mechanistic models of development, leadership, etc. For example, intuition and attunement are very important parts of indigenous people's perspectives of the world and how it operates. The mechanistic world, which tends to be highly linear, is now having difficulty and tensions working with a world that is basically holistic and sees the world as organic and living. So when you have these two values, this dilemma of two values creates situations in which the development in the Pacific in many of the areas really looks kind of convoluted and strange. An example of the importance of intuition, I think the 21st century, probably the most important cause of change is we now have a resource that's not only renewable, but it's also self-generating. It's information. There's so much of it that we're literally drowning in it, and having the ability to try to sort it out, to drive decision-making, is creating the kinds of challenges that modern corporations and organizations are trying to deal with. from the Pacific, or at least from the perspective of wisdom, this is where intuition and attunement can make the difference. You sense and have it guided in towards making that decisions. The greatest ocean in the world with hundreds of thousands of islands, every one of those islands were detected through that process. So recognizing that the intuition of a person and people, attunement to its environment, a view of a holistic world can make the difference, because change is becoming increasingly dynamic in the world. If you can picture a railroad conductor following a railroad schedule, highly linear, and then you can image a sea captain. They both have the same distance, but the different methods and skills they will need to get to destination will vary. The world of the train conductor is coming to an end, because the assumption is there'll be little change, if any. The world of the navigator will continue, and if anything, will become even more dynamic. So the abilities, the assumptions have to change. Let me get quickly down to something as basic as values. In a linear situation of leadership, if you try to apply it on a global level, power and authority is the universal basis for leadership. But when you're dealing with highly diverse cultures in the global level, that will not work. In fact, it will probably engender violence, war, and other kinds of tensions. So what is it that drives values in highly dynamic, diverse settings? Humility, respect. So the values shift, because people can recognize humility and respect versus power and authority. Well, they come from two different sets of assumptions. One's recognizes the uniqueness of the existing setting. The other presumes that everything's the same. So it has a monocultural approach to advancing ideas and assumptions of development. So many of the kinds of things that I think that this program has to offer is looking at these, we have to shift our thinking. And by doing that, we shouldn't focus so much on being successful as we must focus on being effective. They don't necessarily mean the same thing.
Tusi, thank you very much. And I appreciate you getting up early, although I know you get up early anyway. But thanks a lot. And we'll come back to you and when we get to the breakout sessions, the discussions, and so forth.
Okay.
What I have in front of you here is a wheel, if you will, that describes the process we use when we look at an organization. First thing to do is identify what are the key social culture encounters. Where are their places? Is it in meetings? Is it in management supervision? Is it in interaction with customers? Those all are places where there's social culture encounters. And going in and identifying those is very critical to the process. The social culture encounter, as I said, it's a process whereby two or more people get together and they have an interaction. That may sound simplistic, but believe it or not, a lot of people try to study culture without getting to the basic unit of analysis, which is social culture encounters. It's the basis for human communication relationships. It also, if we want to look at the importance of it, the more heterogeneous the cultural setting, the more need there is for cross-cultural competence, because the more likely it is that there could be misunderstandings and dilemmas and so forth coming from the heterogeneous nature or the diverse nature of a cultural setting. One thing I want to mention is from the 1980s. I don't know if any of you remember, Jan Carlson, CEO of Scandinavian Airline Systems, wrote a book called Moments of Truth. And it's really an early description of what we're talking about in terms of social culture encounters. He called the moments of truth the critical factor in SAS and what they were doing. And he said basically every day millions of encounters occur between the SAS employees and their customers, even though they may be for 15 seconds and only occur 5 times per customer. There are these millions of things that have to be managed. And if they're not managed, the customer doesn't get the right product and they don't get things to their satisfaction. So he focused the airline on trying to study those social culture encounters, the moments of truth. And it was quite an interesting book, and it was quoted quite frequently by people, and a lot of people understood the concept. For some reason, the idea seems to have gone away a bit. So just keep in mind that an increase in heterogeneous settings increases the cultural diversity and therefore increases the potential for dilemmas. The dimensions, we won't spend a lot of time talking about those. If you're interested, you can certainly read up with Trompinar's works or with Hosted or many others who look at cultural dimensions as important. I might mention that most of the dimensions that are used today came from people like Edward Hall, the anthropologist, and people like Taka Parsons, Kluckholm, and so forth. You can see that those are frameworks whereby then you can, once you've identified a social culture encounter, you look and see which ones of those dimensions are most prominent or have an influence, and which ones maybe in a particular group or a meeting you have people who have individual values and people who have collective values. Or maybe you have people who have believe in a sequential agenda oriented meeting, or maybe not an agenda, maybe talking small talk for a while before you get to the actual important part of the meeting. Trompinar's, of course, these are his values, and I'll just mention those to you. But like I said, if you want to read up on them, they're certainly worthwhile. Cultural dilemmas come from this whole process of looking at social culture encounters and cultural dimensions, because then you start identifying places in the culture where there are seemingly opposing values differences, where people don't necessarily agree on how the change might be implemented or what the result of the change might be, or many other aspects of the process. And I could read you off several thousand right now, but I won't. We don't have the time. Here are some examples of cultural dilemmas. I won't read those to you, but I'll let you look at it. You will get a copy of all this with the taping, and I'll be happy to send these slides to anyone who requests them. But I put them up here for effect, without the idea of going through and reading them to you. Okay. Once again, places where you can have social cultural encounters and cultural dilemmas. You can see things like agreements and contracts, host-guest encounters in tourism, negotiations. All those are places. The interface of technology in an environment, whether it be a customer service environment or employee environment or whatever, all those are places where you can get this type of diversity. And so the 4R approach is something that Trompinars gives us to look at. Those are the steps that he said that are important in being able to reconcile and then realize or implement cultural solutions. So if we want to change an organization, we need to identify and reconcile key cultural dilemmas related to the change and development initiative. Once we've done that, then we can start producing a critical inventory of what are the key dilemmas that need to be worked on. We won't we can spend a day on this, but basically, if you look at the dilemmas, it comes down to my values versus your values many times. For example, in environmental issues, it may be protect the environment. The other values may be full speed ahead, forget about protecting the environment, get the jobs. So you can see that also reconciled cultural design is where you create something that's a new box. A compromise is working outside of a box, but still with the same box, okay? And I might mention that apathy is a very common response in change situations, to do nothing or to try not to do anything, because an apathy response could be a survival response in some organizations. The sustained solutions are critical, and essentially, just to review, identify the dilemmas. That involves charting the cultural space that goes on in the dilemmas, then maybe looking at the strengths and weaknesses of the opposites, and coming up with a new box that identifies the strengths and weaknesses and builds on the strengths with the new creative solution and minimizes the weaknesses, okay? Our experiences with this approach, and that includes TUSI and back to the, I guess we started working together in the early 90s, but we did studies of organizational culture in 32 different organizations in 10 countries, extensive studies. We also did a study of the Australian Air Force where we had 17,000 people who took a survey based on dilemmas we identified, and then went back in and created a questionnaire, and they were using that in developing creating a new Air Force culture project. We did a merger due diligence study where we identified the cultural values and dilemmas in 2 different organizations. And then we went back in and helped them identify places where HR or where accounting or whoever may be different or similar in those 2 organizations. We had a new superintendent in Hawaii that we did massive studies of the teachers and the parents and the administrators across the school system. And the administrator was trying to put in a new type of culture there, and he used the information to try to do that. The Department of Defense, in recent years, we've worked with organizations like DOMI and other Department of Defense arms where we identify different cultural dilemmas. And those of you who know of some of my work, you know about the hookah pipe dilemma, and that's where that came from. And it was a study to try to create not only knowledge of the dilemmas that people who were service people in other countries faced, but also identify the dilemmas in ways that we could use them in training. Okay, and there's just a few things here I would mention. If we look, cultural dilemmas apply in all professions, certainly in tourism. Do you have a sense of place, or do you have a tourism product that represents something in a home office 10,000 miles away? Business, certainly things like group motivation, individual motivation. Healthcare, many times the patient care workers and the medical doctors and so forth assume that the patients have the same type of worldview with regard to healing and healthcare, and many times they don't. So compliance and other issues like that come out. Education, I taught in Hawaii for 30 years, and one of the things we learned there is many students who came from some countries didn't want to be in seminars and have discussions. They wanted to be lectured to in a nice, orderly fashion. The military, today's wars often involve trying to win over the locals, trying to win what they call the hearts and minds. And in government, power distance and decision making, once again, is there a value for involving citizens, or is it more of an autocratic style? Okay, time is not going to permit me to show you 2 cases. I will share these with you in a future handout or whatever. If you like the cases, I'll send them to you. The first case is one about environmental protection from a cruise ship company. The cruise ship company was actually threatening what they brought people there for. There were so many cruise ships that were destroying the reef, and that comes from a study that I did in the South Pacific, a consulting project. Pay for performance. There's a case of a new manager who came to Hawaii and put in a pay for performance system among a group of collective-oriented housekeepers who then became very unproductive because of it. So, because I promised Jeremy I would wrap it up in a minute so they can do the basic discussions and other things, the polling questions and so forth, I'll just review and remind you that the 3 concepts above are always interrelated. Yet, unfortunately, in professional education training, you don't always see them that way. You see them looked at as individualized areas to study. They're not looked at holistically, and I'm arguing they have to be looked at holistically because they are very interrelated. So that's pretty much my wrap up for where we are. I will turn it over, I guess, Ryan, are you going to do the polling questions?
Yep.
Okay, I'm finished for now. I'll be here if you need me to comment, but I'll turn it over to you now. See, Jeremy, I told you. 40 minutes.
Sorry, I couldn't get myself off of mute quick enough. I was a little bit surprised. So awesome. You know what, Jerry, there's going to be a point probably where we come back with some questions for you, but we want to give people the opportunity to kind of weigh in here and find out what's going on, and we're so glad to be able to do that. So I'm going to work with our
polling questions now, though, or
yes, sir. I'm going to go right there, Jerry. So. Okay. So
Okay.
what I'm going to ask is I'm going to ask Ryan to go ahead and start the polling on the system so that people can weigh in with those questions. And Jerry, while we're asking people to weigh in, they get both questions at the same time. And so why don't you read those questions, Jerry, while we're giving people a couple minutes to respond to that poll.
All right.
So let's, before you read the questions, Ryan, are you able to get that poll started for us?
Yeah, it should be up.
All right, so people can weigh in to the 2 poll questions. Jerry, why don't you read those and you can talk about those a couple minutes while we're waiting for people to weigh in, and then we'll have Ryan give you the results.
Okay, in the movie Fierce Creatures, I showed you a clip from. A takeover by a conglomerate is based on a one best way approach to change, and it's illustrated. If you were John Cleese's character, would you continue with the approach you described in the meeting with the zoo employees? Yes or no?
All right, so we'll give people just a second to think about that a little bit. Folks, we are worried that you're not seeing the poll that has went out. So if you want to check your Zoom window, you should be able to see that poll. I just got a message that we're not getting any votes here. So we're just gonna make sure.
It came up, and I voted, and then it went away. It asked me to submit. I did, and it went away. It did come up.
Okay. We weren't getting any votes really quickly. Now we're starting to see them roll in, I think, Ryan. Yep. I think we're seeing those. Ryan, are you seeing those come in on your side?
No, but I'm going to see if they pop up when I click end the poll.
Okay, just a minute. Let's hold that. So let's go to the next question. So go ahead and Jerry, give us that next question.
Number 2, the Vicos project is a classic case of change. Power is an important feature. And the question is, do we give power and the effective management of power enough attention and change and development initiatives? Yes or no?
So we'll give people just a couple minutes to respond to that. And then we're going to be moving toward our activity for breaking you guys into some small groups and giving you an opportunity to, Kim, we're going to definitely promote that out there for you too, but we're going to make sure that we get the poll done so that people can weigh in, and then we'll break you into small groups. Before we do that, and Jerry, while we're waiting on people to finalize that poll, I do see that Kim has pasted some stuff about your certificate program. Maybe you could just give us.
Yeah, that's later. That's later.
Okay, fantastic. Kim had put that out there now. Guys, we're going to close the poll in about 10 seconds. So Ryan, let's go ahead and start. Let's go ahead and start coming down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And let's go ahead and close that poll, Ryan, and just let people see the results to that. And Jerry, you should see those pop up on your screen as well.
Jeremy, I didn't get any results registered here.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense at all.
Just for the
Folks,
sake of
I'm not
time,
really sure what happened there.
Jeremy, for the sake of time, why don't you let them bring it up in their discussion groups?
Yeah, we'll definitely go ahead and do that. So, not really sure what happened there, folks, and my apologies. Yes, I'm not sure what happened there, Dr. Lynn, as to why we did not get the votes. We've never had that happen before, so we'll definitely report that to Zoom. I want to make the best use of your time, though. So I've shared a document with all of you that we're going to use to do some small group breakout work. And I'm going to ask Ryan to break us into 4 or 5 groups. I know we've lost some people, Ryan, so if you feel we should go 4, that's fine. I'll leave that judgment call up to you. Ryan is going to put you each into 4 smaller groups. And if at least one person in your group can click the link in the chat window, you'll be able to access the small group breakout. that it's a document that we have created for you to be able to talk about what you heard and what questions you may want Jerry to give a little bit more on. As OD people, we find that breaking people into small groups gives us the ability to allow everybody to participate in the conversation today. So Ryan's going to make our small groups. While he's doing that, I want to just have you take a look at that document. Before you do the small groups, Suzanne, Ryan, before you actually break us into small groups, Suzanne, would you mind reading our questions that are in that document for everybody to do? And while Suzanne's getting ready to read the questions, the directions are also in the document we're linking you to. So we're going to ask each of your small groups to choose someone to facilitate your conversation and someone to capture your conversation in the document, a scribe, if you will. There is a section of this document that is for each group. We should have 4 or 5 groups that we'll break into. So you just want to find your part of the group. And as you can see, our question number 1, if you're looking at that document, is simply put your names down so that we know who participated in each group. Suzanne, I'm hoping that I've given you enough time to get that document up so that you can read question 2, 3, and 4 that we want them to focus on. And if they have time, Jerry, we'll have them get the poll questions in there as well. Suzanne, are you able to read those questions for us?
I am. As Jeremy said, we asked you to type your names in and then tell us a little bit about what you learned from today's presentation. Was any of it new information, and what can you use moving forward? Those types of things. Question 3 is, do you feel you could support a new paradigm for culture change and leadership? It's a new paradigm on change, and it's going to require change to make it happen. And how should we proceed with that? And the final question is, how could this new paradigm or body of knowledge affect the way we approach change and development? So we'd appreciate any responses you can add to this. We'll be able to improve our presentation from your responses, and you can share the information with everybody else.
And we are in the process of trying to make that as seamless as possible. We seem to be having some difficulty here. And so I am repasting the link so that you can get that again. You should be able to access it. Again, I'm going to have Ryan break us into small groups. And if you find that once you get into your small groups, there is not someone in your group who can record on the document, just have someone in your group raise their hand, and one of us will pop in to help you through that. Again, we've got those questions. I'll also have Ryan maybe paste the questions in our chat box here. So Ryan, do you mind going ahead and breaking us into small groups? We're going to give you about 15 minutes for this discussion. Get as far as you can, and then we'll come back for everybody to be able to come back and participate. So Ryan, why don't you go ahead and break us into small groups?
All right. Everyone should be getting a prompt on their screen to join the small group, so you have to click on that.
You should be able to. Okay, I think it's doing some changes here. Are you seeing people in groups?
Yep, almost everyone.
Okay, so you were trying to put me into a breakout room.
Yeah, because there really is no such thing as like a green room now.
Okay. Looks like Jerry just came back to us. Sorry about that, Jerry. How are you, man?
Jerry's on mute.
Oh, you're on mute, Jerry, just so you know. All right, so it looks like we're getting, okay, so There we go. We got Suzanne back. Sorry about that, Jerry, Suzanne, and John. We did not have a way to leave you out of that assignment piece. So I think we're going good here. Is there anybody who's got their hand raised, Ryan, that I need to go check in on?
Not that I can see.
I think we need to get Quezzy in a group, unless he. I don't know if Quezzy. I'm not sure if you didn't see the prompt, but we should be assigning you to a breakout group, and you should see a link or a pop-up that says "Join a group." There we go.
All
I think
right.
he got it. Okay.
Yep.
Jeremy Ann Roberts in group 3 raised her hand, so should I send you in there?
Yes, please.
All right. I'm not sure which of these Jeremy Grandstaffs is you, though.
Oh, I'll change my name. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And Kristen and is it EPEC? Is that how we say your name, EPEC? Did you see a prompt up there? You're on mute, by the way. Did you see a prompt to join a breakout group on your screen?
I did, but I could not participate, so I went back to the main chat room. So I'm going to try it again.
When you said you couldn't participate, what do you mean by you couldn't participate?
I was speaking and I was not being able to heard.
Well, now
Okay.
you're unmuted, so now everyone can hear you.
Okay.
So let's try to put her back in. Ryan, go ahead and send me into 3 and I'll go there.
All right.
And could you send me in a group?
Sure.
Yeah, I
Jerry.
wasn't sure if you wanted to be in a group or not, Jerry.
I want to see what's going on.
Okay.
And Ryan, if you send me into random groups like every 5 minutes, I can just kind of be there and display some recording stuff.
All right. Jeremy, you got a prompt waiting for you. Jerry,
Okay.
I'm going to put you into a group next.
Okay.
John, I'm going to send you into a group.
Hey folks, this is Jeremy. I saw someone's hand was raised in here.
Can you hear me, Jeremy?
Yep, I can hear you. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
So, yeah, how can I? So I saw your hand was raised.
Yeah. So I'm here. I wasn't able to open the document that you want us to use, and I see Graham Isaacs here and somebody else, but nothing's happening.
Okay, Graham, are you guys able to talk to us? Can we hear you at all? All right, let me see what I can do here to help you out, okay? So you were not able to get the link to work either?
Correct.
Okay, what happened when you tried to click the link?
It highlights, and that's it.
Okay, did you try maybe copying it and pasting it into your browser?
Just doing that now.
And I'm trying to figure out what's going on with Graham. Graham, are you able to hear me? We are not hearing you. I'm so sorry, and we don't seem to have Graham. I think that's part of the issue. There's part of me that almost wants to try to put you into a different group. I'm so sorry for the problem.
No worries. I was able to get the link open, Jeremy, but it's Breakout Group 1 that I have, not 3.
Yeah, if you scroll down, you'll see 3. You just have to scroll it
I
down.
see. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
So unfortunately, I'm having trouble. I'm having trouble getting you here. How are you, Jerry? How are you doing, man? So we've got a situation where we've got a couple people in here that apparently are not talking. Whose phone number is 7068? Can you hear me? Ends in 7068, or it must be on mute.
Well, they're muted, yeah. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here. Hold on, I'm just trying to figure this out, guys.
Graham's on here as well, I think.
Yep, and I've been trying to talk to Graham and I'm not hearing him, so.
He's muted.
So Graham, if you can hear me, perhaps there's a mute button that you can press to unmute yourself. And 7068, we're not hearing you either. I'm gonna see if I can do something to unmute you as well.
Ann is on and is unmuted. So we've got me and you and Ann at least.
And yes, I understand that. And we can go ahead and have the conversation. I just was trying to fix the other pieces. Jerry, I wasn't sure if you were gonna stay in here or not. So
I was just
I
going
have to actually go back to the panel piece. But the two of you are welcome to chat, or Ann, we can move you to a different group. I'm not sure why we're not hearing from the others.
Sure, happy to participate wherever you put me.
I think group 1 has got activity, Jeremy, group 1 and 2. So maybe put everybody into 2 groups, since we need to have a collective mass in each group to talk. So
yeah, let's go ahead and do that if you don't mind. So go ahead and just click the thing that ends this.
yeah, just go back where it says leave breakout room and go back and then get reassigned.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you both.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry. All right, and I'm trying to figure out what else is going here, Jerry, with the other two. I'm gonna see what I can do.
This is the group of us running the show.
Oh,
Do you want to go into another group now?
Sure, let me go into group 1. I heard they were talking.
All right.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So Jeremy, I'm still with all of you guys, the ones running the show. I feel like I have a power position now because I can run the show with y'all.
Welcome to the team, man.
Hey, man.
And do you want me to try moving you to another room?
Well, I don't want to be disruptive. So how much more time do we have in the breakouts?
Jeremy? Oh, you're on mute, Jeremy.
Sorry about that. Probably about 10 minutes. No wonder you guys couldn't hear me. So we've got about 10 minutes. I would say let's go ahead and put her into number 2. And I would say just pop in as you can. And then Ryan, I need you to make sure that everybody who's in the groups are unmuted.
Okay.
So, Ann, we're going to bounce you into group 2, and I would say just go ahead and plug into them as best you can.
Okay, am I leaving this meeting now, Jeremy? Should I hit leave meeting or?
No. Ryan's going to move you over, and you might have to click breakout rooms again in order to get the prompt.
Okay. Okay, I see it here. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
All right. Okay, I don't know who's actually here in this particular piece.
Jeremy, it's Suzanne. I'm still here.
Yeah, I was pulling my thing. So we've still got Queasy and IPEC in the movie, in the meeting. Did you guys want to go into a different place, or are we just not sure what's happening there? Suzanne, I have a feeling maybe this was talked about why I was in a different breakout.
What's this?
So I still have 2 people in here with us. Queasy is one of them.
He says he's in a room and writing.
Oh, okay. Well, You know what? I bet he's on twice. Okay.
And yeah, I think we may have 2 people on twice.
Yeah, okay. It's really weird. We're seeing some hiccups with Zoom that I have not seen before, Suzanne, so this is really interesting.
Well, you are our software talent. This is the first time I've used breakout rooms. It's really neat, actually. It's got tons of potential.
Yep, if we can just keep them working right, you know what I mean?
It is a learning experience.
So Ryan, are you able to send a chat message that goes to all the rooms?
Oh, John's back.
Oh, hey John, how are you doing, man?
And Ryan, your mic is muted.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I should be able to send a message to all the groups.
Okay, let's send a message to all the groups that we're gonna just put coming back in 5 minutes for a debrief and Q&A.
And how do we tell who's in what group?
Well, so Ryan has the ability to do that. Ryan, what room is Queasy in? Because he's on twice.
He's not. He's been in the main room with us the entire time. He hasn't been in a breakout group. And we tried earlier. I'm not sure what's going on, but he's on mute, so I don't know how to help get him into a group.
Ryan, can you just unmute his mic?
Yes. Okay.
How's that?
Perfect.
Queasy, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Sorry, I didn't know I was in the room with you guys. I thought I was in a room. That's why I was typing the way I was.
Okay, so you know, in all honesty, man, we've got about 5 minutes left. Do you want us to pop you into one of these other groups?
No, I'm fine. I mean, when we get into the open room, I can share what I've got in this room. I don't know who's seeing it, but
well, so are you typing under group 1, or what room are you typing under?
It was room 1.
Okay, so all right, so
it's
let's
the one
see.
that had Regina McClinton, Tusi Avagalio.
So let's just put him into that group so that he at least can let them know he was writing in the same area as them and talk with them. Is that okay, Queasy?
Sure.
Okay,
All right.
fantastic.
You should be getting a prompt on your screen
that says join breakout 1.
Where is that? I don't see that.
It should be in your Zoom window. So you have the Google window that you're typing in, but there's also your Zoom window, and that's
where all of our cameras are. It's the window where all of our cameras are.
Breakout rooms, breakout 1.
I bet he got it.
Yep, he's in there. No one else is typing, though. Only group 1.
I went into group 3, and they were both on mute, and no one was saying anything. So that's probably one reason. But it was just Graham, Isaacs, and one other person. So
yeah, Anne was actually in that group originally, and we moved her to a different group. So has anybody... Okay. So Ryan, I need you to break this down for me. So first of all, has everybody been unmuted like we asked?
Yeah.
Okay. And so we only have activity coming out of group number 1 in the document. We do not have activity out of group 2 or 3 or 4. Nope. Is that right?
Well, it's down to 3 groups right now.
Well, group 3 really doesn't have anybody because there are 2 people that weren't unmuted when we were in there. So you're telling me they're unmuted now, right?
Yeah, they should be unless they remuted themselves. Well, that's where Ann was, and she got moved out, and Jerry was in there for a while, and he got moved out. So that's why there's not that many people in there.
Okay.
And that's where
is that breakout 3?
Too. Yeah.
I tried to just go in there and see what was going on in there, and neither of them responded.
Okay. John, can we have you go into group 2 and see if they are capturing their discussion on the Google Doc and we're not
Yeah,
seeing it?
I just need to be assigned there.
All right, I'm sending into group 2.
Let them know we have 2 minutes.
Yes, Jeremy.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, and Suzanne, we're going to send you into group 1 just to give them a 2-minute warning as well, okay?
Okay.
So let's go ahead and send her in. Graham! I just saw that Graham came back.
He's been having technical issues.
Okay. Gotcha. That's all right, Graham. Stick with us. We'll do it. Suzanne, we're going to have you go.
Oh, everybody's starting to come back now.
They must have got my 5-minute warning, Jeremy. You're muted again.
I did. I saw it.
Are we all back in the large group?
Yes.
All right, folks. Thanks so much for your patience. Ryan, I'm going to have you just officially in the breakout groups.
All right.
So we did have some technical difficulties, and we've got some people coming back into the meeting right now. It takes about 1 minute for everybody to get back. You guys kind of popped in a little bit sooner than we expected. So apparently you were ready to come back. That's awesome. But we are still waiting for a couple people to rejoin the meeting.
Okay, and Jeremy, one question. Can you give me about 1 minute at the end of the session before we close it out?
Yeah, I'm going to. We're going to run a couple minutes over, folks, but I do want to give at least a chance for you to give some highlights from your discussions that you had in your small groups. I think we only ended up having 2 groups who discussed. Am I correct in that? I had someone from group 1 and someone looks like maybe they were recording for group 2. Does that sound about right? Or did everybody just write in group 1 and hopefully it gets...
Everybody essentially was writing in group 1. I recorded on my own paper what we discussed in group 1. So, yeah.
So that was really interesting. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but clearly we need to, there are always some things that we can do better, and apparently that was a little bit lost there, but we did capture a lot of discussion. And so it looks like we had 2 groups that were actually talking. Maybe we could have a person from each of those groups report out on some of your discussion. And I know we're running a little bit behind, so I know everybody can see everything that was recorded in that document, but is there someone from our first group that might be willing to tack on to what Dr. Lin says here with great discussion in our group? Anybody feel like they want to talk about maybe what were some of the key highlights for you guys as we were having those discussions?
Tom, do you mind? You're still muted, actually, Tom?
Tom, you're muted.
Remember, you do want to unmute your line if you're going to talk.
Hey, Tom.
Okay, I assume I'm no longer muted. Is that correct?
We've got you open now. I do have someone who's a really fast typist. We gotta pull your mic away from your keyboard a little bit. But Tom, go ahead and.
Okay. So I've not worked with the sociocultural encounters before, particularly as a unit of measure. And so I asked Jerry, who joined us after a few minutes, from starting what that looked like. And he related his work with the Australian Air Force, and he gave us some examples of how information was gathered, formed into a survey, and then in this case of 17,000 airmen, and then the usual kinds of statistics could be done on the survey results. So I found that whole process very interesting.
Excellent. Anybody else from that particular group want to share any other highlights of your discussion? If not, we'll go to a different group. And again, we'll be sharing all the stuff that you guys have captured down. I am really sorry for the differences in the instructions there. It doesn't sound like we have anybody from Tom's group that wants to share anymore. Any other reflections from the other group? Anyone feel like sharing? Remember, unmute that line if you did mute for us, so that we get the pleasure of hearing you.
I just wanted to share that the diagram that was shared in the original presentation about my values, your values, gives a nice succinct way to capture where people may be coming from. And I think the thing that we don't talk about when we talk about culture change and leadership is the construct of choice, and that how people choose to engage with, one, people in leader roles, or two, with a change initiative, is typically based upon their own background and experience, and how we create the space for them in which to feel safe to speak up and own their own voice pretty much dictates how well they choose to participate, whether it's choosing to be someone who is accountable or responsible, or someone who needs to be consulted, or someone informed. Those are the sorts of things I think that we need to talk about to help, one, it's about really creating the relationships to as the basis for the interaction with the larger group. Thank you.
And Dr. Lynn, we do have you unmuted if you had some thoughts that you wanted to share from the breakout discussions.
Yes, I really enjoyed our group discussion because there was such a wide range of types of differences that we talked about, from national culture to different national cultures, to different regions within a country, to different cultures within departments of an organization like marketing versus technology. And all these differences kind of have their own life. And it was fascinating listening to everybody's experiences. We talked some about intuition. We talked about a strengths focus in response to the gentleman that just spoke. Since I've worked with strengths for 35 years, the positive approach creates the most safety. When people are seen for their best, they feel the safest. And so it was a fascinating discussion. And we had people that have worked in the UN, have worked across the globe, have worked extensively within a company on their culture. And I really appreciated everybody's input. Our learnings were a wide variety of learnings and a wide variety of different kinds of approaches. And for example, in her organization, pardon my voice here, allergies, and in her organization has something called learning groups, where they step away from the day-to-day business activities and they focus on what they're learning. And it was very wise, very wise. So there was a lot of wisdom. I really appreciated it, enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks, Dr. Lynn. I've got time for 2 or 3 more reflections. If you want to give some reflections from your group's discussion, just to unmute your line. And so we've got time for 2 or 3 more comments. And then Jerry, I'm going to come to you for a quick wrap up after I do some thank yous to our partners.
Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeannie.
Oh, it's Kim.
Kim, sorry, Kim.
That's all right. In our group, I was in Dr. Lynn's group, and we really talked about, well, we talked about so much, but the importance of intuition and attunement, and how, you know, we've tried to squash that for so long, and we need to bring that back into the equation and have a more holistic, integrated approach.
Awesome. 2 more comments. Final comments, or this meeting hasn't been worth your time. Anyone else? Remember, you can unmute by unmuting your phone. If you've muted on the phone, you can unmute by hitting the mute button in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. Or I believe you can actually dial *6 if you're on the phone and have been muted. You can also raise your hand and Ryan can unmute you. Any other final comments before we wrap up?
Hi, this is Ipek Tafi here. I realize that I need to master Zoom a bit better, so that's what I'm learning. But the other one is eliciting stories, not taking necessarily an approach to understand where people are coming from, their cultures, with their feelings, thoughts, etc. That's really thought-provoking for me. But Dr. Tusi asked about, mentioned the importance of building trust. So it would be my curiosity how to come to a great place of trust where people would genuinely share their stories so we can elicit cues about their culture. Thank you.
That's a great thought. And I think maybe even Jerry, if you have some ideas on that, definitely feel free to include those in there. I do want to go ahead and pass it back to Jerry to wrap up. Before I do that, I want to say thank you to Suzanne and Jerry for leading the discussion on this and really for bringing this idea forward. I know that Nexus and ISODC and even John and I's company, S&G Endeavors, are really excited to dive further into this issue. A big thanks to Ryan and John. John from Nexus for Change for running our board and really helping to strengthen the Nexus for Change work that's happening. It's just always a pleasure to see these happening. The only other thing that I wanted to say is ISODC is also holding a roundtable discussion on April 4th around implicit bias. And it's an opportunity to really dive further into how does implicit bias impact what we're doing. Kind of very relevant to some of the stuff that we've been talking about today, Jerry. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to you and ask you to wrap us up. And as hold on, I just got a note from Kimberly that says remind about the ISODC conference that's coming up as well. So I'll turn it back over to you, Jerry, to take us into our final stretch here and get us wrapped up.
Okay, great. I wanted to get to one slight 30-second idea about the Institute for Culture and Adaptive Leadership, which is one of the organizations that we're involved in and is partnering with as an affiliate with ISO DC and also with Nexus for Change and all the other different organizations involved. I have to mention this or Kim won't let me turn off my computer. We do have two different programs that we're offering. If you want more information on them, you can contact Suzanne or Kim or myself. We have a non-academic program in cultural competence we're offering through Florida Institute of Technology. And we also have a book that Harris Friedman and I published recently on this. And the reason we're mentioning these are they're very related to the conversations that we've had today. Kim, you want to say a little something about your slide there?
Sure. We have a new certificate and master's program that is validated by Middlesex University in London, UK. And the focus of the certificate and the master's is culture change and adaptive leadership. We have a new cohort that is starting in May, and we also have one in September. So please contact me if you would like more information.
Okay, with that, I want to finally thank my colleague and friend Franz Topiners and Charles Hampton Turner for all the inspiration and ideas that they've given me over the years. I've worked with Franz since 20 years, and he's been a great person for influence and so forth. So if you have any questions or want to discuss any of these issues, certainly Suzanne and I are very much available. Tusi as well, I'm sure. So we'll be available and we'd be happy to talk with you and have a call or whatever you want or share materials, and we're more than happy to exchange ideas like that. Tusi, I want to particularly thank you for your help and your involvement, and Suzanne, the same with you. I'm going to turn off my screen share now, and Anyone have a question or anything before we close? Well, thanks to Jeremy and Ryan and John for all their great help and their production support and so forth.
Thanks,
and
Jerry.
looks like we can count on doing some more things like this. This is the first time I've used the breakout rooms with Zoom, and I'm thinking about the possibilities as we're
Cool.
doing.
And hey, Jerry, can I say just a couple things that I put in chat?
Yep.
So for everyone still here, thank you so much. And for my Nexus community and for anyone really, I put in my contact emails. So just give me a line if you want to talk about doing your own session. And let's see, I think that's it. I put something else, but it's already gone. So, but thanks everyone for being here. I really appreciate it. Oh, and I asked for feedback on how you all like this session from Nexus and just using Zoom in the breakout groups. So thanks, Jeremy and Jerry and Ryan.
So a big thanks to everybody for making this happen. We will officially conclude today's conversation, but if you do have questions, you're always welcome to stick after. A big thanks to Jerry and Suzanne. Just love what you guys are doing with the culture, and the certificates are amazing. I love when we can see more people. You know, I always see those conversations about so-and-so is certified. And so just really great to see that stuff taking off. Thanks, John and Nexus, for all your support. Ryan and S&G Endeavors for everything that we're doing to bring collaborative approaches to these conversations. Be on the lookout for a follow-up of today's video, an evaluation of today's call, and of course the presentations and slides. Thanks so much, and we conclude today's broadcast. John.